Mom raised her champagne glass, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Emma, you're a mistake. We wish you never existed." Dad nodded. My brother Marcus just smiled and sipped his wine. I packed my bags that night. The next morning, when I canceled their $4,200 monthly support, 32 missed calls from family. The crystal chandelier cast shadows across our dining room table. October 15th, 2023. Mom and Dad's 45th wedding anniversary. I'd spent 3 hours that afternoon perfecting their favorite red velvet cake, the one with cream cheese frosting that Dad always requested for special occasions. My hands still smelled like vanilla extract. The whole family was there. Marcus, my younger brother, lounging in his designer suit like he owned the place. His wife Jennifer, scrolling her phone between courses. Even the Hendersons from next door had joined us. Mom loved showing off for the neighbors. I set the cake down carefully, 3 layers of perfection topped with delicate sugar roses. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad." That's when Mom stood up. Her champagne flute caught the light as she raised it high. "Before we cut this beautiful cake," she began, her voice carrying that theatrical tone she used for her garden club speeches, "I think it's time we addressed the elephant in the room." The room went silent. Even Jennifer looked up from her phone. "Emma," Mom continued, her eyes boring into mine, "you're 42 years old. You're a burden to this family. Honestly," she paused, letting the words hang in the air like poison gas. "We wish you never existed." Dad nodded slowly, deliberately. "Your mother's right, sweetheart. It's time you knew." Marcus smirked behind his wine glass. He'd been waiting for this moment. I could see it in his eyes. The neighbors stared at their plates, suddenly fascinated by the china pattern I'd helped Mom pick out 15 years ago. My smile froze on my face. Inside, everything shattered. 42 years of bedtime stories, birthday cakes, family vacations, and unconditional love crumbling like ash. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't give them the satisfaction. I simply picked up my purse, kissed Mom's cheek. She actually recoiled, and walked out of that dining room with my head high. 3 hours later, I was in my car with 2 suitcases and my laptop. I drove to the Marriott downtown, checked into a suite, and opened my banking app. $4,200. That's what I'd been transferring to their account every single month for the past 8 years. Mortgage, utilities, property taxes, Dad's medical bills, everything they couldn't afford on their retirement income. Before we continue with how I turned their own greed against them, I want to thank those of you who support these stories. Your contributions help me share these moments of truth with others who need to hear that betrayal doesn't have to mean defeat. My finger hovered over the cancel automatic transfer button. That was the moment I knew. Justice wouldn't come from forgiveness or family therapy. It would come from my own hands. Click. The hotel room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. I sat on the edge of the king-size bed, staring at my phone screen, that banking app still open, the canceled transfer confirmation glowing like a small victory in the darkness. But victory felt hollow when your heart was breaking. The silence gave way to memories. They crashed over me like waves, each one more painful than the last. 8 years ago, I owned Bloom and Blossom, a thriving floral design business in Brooklyn. 3 employees, contracts with 4 wedding venues, a waiting list of brides who wanted my signature cascading rose arrangements. I'd built it from nothing, just me, a borrowed van, and a dream of making beautiful things for people's most important days. Then Dad's call came. 2:30 a.m., his voice shaking. "Emma, honey, we need help. The medical bills from Mom's surgery. We're drowning." I can still smell the hospital disinfectant from those endless nights by Mom's bedside. Stage 3 breast cancer. Surgery, chemo, radiation. Insurance covered 60%. The rest? $87,000 in bills that kept coming, relentless as rain. I didn't hesitate. I sold Bloom and Blossom for $150,000, half what it was worth, but the buyer knew I was desperate. Every penny went to their debts. Medical bills, second mortgage, property taxes, they'd let slide for 2 years. "You saved us, sweetheart," Dad had whispered, tears in his eyes. "We'll never forget this." But they did forget. Or maybe they chose to. I moved back into my childhood bedroom. the same yellow wallpaper with tiny daisies that I'd begged to change when I turned 16. At 34, successful business owner reduced to sleeping in a twin bed, listening to my parents argue through thin walls about money I was now providing. $2,400 every month, like clockwork. Mortgage payment, utilities, car insurance, property taxes, Dad's prescription medications. I took a job at a corporate flower shop in Manhattan, arranging grocery store bouquets for half the salary I'd made as my own boss. I remembered Marcus visiting last Christmas, pulling up in his new Tesla. "Nice place you guys have here," he'd told Mom, admiring the renovated kitchen. My money had paid for those granite countertops, the stainless steel appliances, the hardwood floors he was walking on in his $400 shoes. "Emma keeps us comfortable," Mom had said, but she'd whispered it like a secret, like admitting I provided for them was somehow embarrassing. The whispers got louder over time. I'd catch fragments through doors left slightly open. "She's 40 and still living at home. Taking up the guest room we could rent out. Never married, no kids of her own. What kind of life is that?" They spoke about me like I was a burden they couldn't quite shake. The same daughter who'd given up everything to keep their world from collapsing. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos. There was one from Dad's 70th birthday party, me in the background, serving cake I'd made from scratch, while Marcus posed with his arm around Dad like the devoted son. The caption read, "Blessed with such a loving family." Loving family. I'd believed that once. I remembered the thank you cards I used to find meaningful. The ones Mom would leave on my pillow after I'd paid another crisis bill. "For our angel," they'd say. But the cards stopped coming around year 3. The gratitude dried up like flowers left too long without water. The most painful memory was from last month. I'd overheard Mom talking to Mrs. Henderson through the kitchen window. "Emma's just never quite figured out her own life. You know? It's hard having an adult child who can't stand on her own 2 feet. Adult child who couldn't stand on her own feet, the woman who'd been standing on my feet, carrying them for 8 years. I realized then, sitting in that hotel room, that their love had conditions, price tags. And apparently, I'd finally exceeded their budget for tolerance. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Mom's upset. Dad says you're being dramatic. Just come home and apologize." Apologize? For what? For finally hearing the truth? I turned off the phone and closed my eyes. The real question wasn't whether I'd go back. The question was what I'd do when they realized what life looked like without me. 3 days later, I returned to the house. Not to apologize, never that, but to collect the rest of my belongings. I'd called ahead, making sure they'd be out. Mom had her garden club meeting, Dad was at his Wednesday poker game, and Marcus was supposedly at work. I used my key one last time, stepping into the foyer that still smelled like the vanilla candles I'd been buying for years. The silence felt different now. Not peaceful, but hollow. I was packing books from the living room when I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Marcus's laugh, unmistakable and cruel. Then Jennifer's voice, sharp with excitement. They were supposed to be gone. My heart hammered as I crept closer to the kitchen doorway, staying hidden behind the wall. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows that helped conceal me. "So when do we put it on the market?" Jennifer was saying. "Soon as we can legally do it," Marcus replied. "Dad's already talked to that lawyer, Davidson. Says we can claim financial hardship. Get Emma declared an unfit co-owner." Co-owner? My blood turned to ice. "But she's been paying for everything," Jennifer said. And for a split second I thought she might defend me. "Doesn't that give her rights?" Marcus snorted. "She's not on any of the deeds." Genius. Dad made sure of that years ago. Emma thinks she's building equity. But legally? She owns nothing. Just been our personal ATM for 8 years. I pressed my back against the wall, my hands shaking. The house was worth $1.2 million now, in Brooklyn Heights. The value had tripled since my parents bought it in 1987. I'd assumed, God, I'd been so stupid. I'd assumed family meant fairness. "She actually thinks we're grateful," Jennifer continued, and I could hear the smile in her voice. That little speech last month about building something together as a family, I almost felt bad for her. "Don't," Marcus said. "She chose this. Could have kept her little flower shop, found some desperate guy to marry, had kids of her own. Instead, she decided to play house with mommy and daddy. That's on her. My chest felt like it was collapsing. Every monthly transfer, every sacrifice, every dream I'd deferred, all of it had been their private joke. The best part, Marcus continued, is she actually thinks they love her. Mom and Dad have been planning this for 2 years. Soon as Emma's savings run dry, and Davidson says that'll be around next spring based on her spending patterns, they'll suggest she explore other living arrangements. What about the monthly payments? Jennifer asked. Mom's got it figured out. They'll downsize, sell this place, move to one of those senior communities in Florida. Bank the difference. Probably $800,000 after taxes. Meanwhile, Emma gets to start over at 42 with no business, no house, no savings. I bit my knuckle to keep from gasping. They'd been tracking my finances, planning my disposal like I was furniture they'd outgrown. And if she fights it? Jennifer's voice held genuine curiosity, like this was all an entertaining game. With what? She's got no legal claim to anything, no documentation that the money was loans instead of gifts. Davidson checked. Emma never even asked for receipts, just kept throwing money at their problems like the dutiful daughter. The contempt in his voice was like acid. This was my little brother, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, defended when Dad got too strict. Your parents are brilliant, Jennifer said, playing the helpless elderly couple while their spinster daughter funds their retirement. It's almost artistic. Marcus laughed again. Mom's Oscar-worthy performance last year when she got that second cancer scare? Pure genius. Emma literally emptied her emergency fund for treatments that insurance would have covered anyway. Mom just forgot to mention that part. The room spun. Mom's cancer scare had cost me $23,000. I'd worked double shifts for 4 months, eating ramen and generic cereal to make those payments. And it had been performance? I whispered to myself. The best part is how guilty she feels about everything, Marcus continued. Like, genuinely believes she owes them for raising her. It's psychological manipulation at its finest. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and hit record. Whatever came next, I needed proof. So what's the timeline? Jennifer asked. Dad thinks 6 more months, maybe 8 if Emma picks up extra work during wedding season. Then they'll start the "we need to talk about your future" conversations. Make it seem like it's for her own good. And she'll just leave? Where else can she go? No savings, no business, no boyfriend. She's trapped herself beautifully. 43 minutes of recording. Every cruel word, every calculated betrayal, every detail of their plan to erase me from the life I'd built for them. I slipped out the back door, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. They thought they had me trapped. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. I drove back to the hotel in complete silence. No radio, no phone calls. Just the steady hum of my Honda Civic and the weight of 43 minutes of recorded betrayal sitting in my pocket like a loaded weapon. They thought they knew me. The dutiful daughter. The family ATM. The spinster who'd sacrifice everything for scraps of fake affection. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. Back in my hotel room, I spread everything across the king-size bed, like a war general planning a campaign. Bank statements, property documents, receipts from 8 years of payments. My laptop glowed in the dim light as I opened spreadsheet after spreadsheet. $247,000. That's what I'd given them over 8 years. Not loans, gifts, according to the law. But gifts with a very specific paper trail. I called Rebecca Torres, my lawyer friend from college. She specialized in elder law and family disputes. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, but she answered on the second ring. Emma? It's been forever. What's wrong? You sound calculated. I finished. Becca, I need help. And I need absolute discretion. 3 hours later, she was sitting across from me in the hotel restaurant, a stack of documents between us and a recording device barely visible under her napkin. Play it again, she said, her expression growing darker with each replay of Marcus and Jennifer's kitchen conversation. When it finished, she leaned back and whistled low. They really said your mother faked a cancer scare? Apparently insurance covered everything. I just forgot to be told that. Becca's pen moved quickly across her legal pad. Emma, this isn't just financial manipulation, this is fraud. Conspiracy. They've been running a long-term con operation against their own daughter. What can we do? She smiled, and it reminded me why she'd been the most feared debater in law school. We can do a lot, but first, tell me, do you want justice, or do you want revenge? I thought about that question for a long time. Justice felt too clean, too civilized for what they'd done, but revenge felt too dirty, too much like becoming them. I want consequences, I said finally. I want them to feel exactly what I've felt, helpless, dependent, betrayed. Then we start with the money. That night, I sat in my hotel room with my laptop and a bottle of wine I'd charged to their credit card. One last petty pleasure before the real work began. Click. Electricity automatic payment cancelled. Click. Water and sewer service cancelled. Click. Internet and cable cancelled. Click. Home insurance cancelled. Click. Property tax payment program cancelled. Click. Dad's prescription auto refill cancelled. Each click felt like cutting a chain. 8 years of financial bondage, severed with a few keystrokes. But I wasn't done. I opened a new checking account at a different bank, transferred every remaining penny from the joint account Marcus thought they'd inherit someday. All $47,000, money they assumed was theirs for the taking. Then I did something that would have terrified the old Emma. I called their mortgage company. Yes, I'd like to report that the co-signer on account number 447829 will no longer be making payments. Please remove my name from all future correspondence and automatic payment arrangements. The representative was confused. Ma'am, are you sure? This will put the account in immediate jeopardy. The primary account holders will be responsible for the full monthly payment. I'm sure, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. Very sure. I hung up and poured another glass of wine. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Sarah, who lived 2 blocks from my parents. We'd kept in touch over the years. Hey, Em, saw lights going out at your folks' place. Everything okay? I smiled. It had only been 6 hours since I'd canceled the electricity. Everything's fine, I texted back. Just some overdue bills catching up with them. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence from Marcus, Mom, and Dad. I spent the time working on my plan with Becca, documenting every payment, every conversation, every promise they'd broken. On day 4, Mom called. I let it ring. Day 5 brought 17 missed calls and a voicemail so panicked I almost felt sorry for her. Almost, Emma, sweetheart, there's been some mistake with the utilities. The electric company says our payment was canceled, and the water. Honey, please call me back. Your father's medications. We need to talk. I deleted the voicemail without finishing it. By day 7, they'd figured out I wasn't coming to their rescue. That's when Marcus showed up at my hotel. The front desk called my room. Miss Chen? There's a Marcus Chen here to see you. Says he's your brother? Tell him I'm not available, I said calmly. And if he comes back, call security. Through my window on the 8th floor, I watched him pace the parking lot, talking angrily on his phone. Probably to Jennifer, maybe to Mom and Dad. I sipped my coffee and opened my laptop. They thought I was a chess piece they could move around their board at will. They didn't know this entire game was being played on a board I'd built, with money I'd earned, moves I'd planned, and rules they'd never bothered to learn. The real game was just beginning. 2 weeks after I'd cut the financial lifeline, my phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Mom's number flashed on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Emma? Her voice was strained, desperate. Sweetheart, we need to talk. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said, stirring sugar into my hotel coffee. You got exactly what you asked for. A life without me. The electricity's been shut off for 5 days, she continued, panic creeping in. Your father's oxygen machine. We had to go to Marcus's apartment, but it's so small, and... That sounds like a problem you should solve as a family, I interrupted. The family that wishes I never existed. Silence, then the sound I'd been waiting 8 years to hear. My mother, crying real tears instead of manipulative ones. We didn't mean it, Emma, we were just... stressed. You know how your father gets when he's been drinking. Actually, Mom, I have 43 minutes of Marcus and Jennifer discussing your 2-year plan to steal my money and kick me out. Would you like me to play it for you? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. What? What are you talking about? I'm talking about Davidson the lawyer. I'm talking about tracking my finances to see when my savings would run dry. I'm talking about Mom's fake cancer scare that cost me $23,000. A gasp. Then Mom's voice, barely a whisper. How did you? I was there, Mom. In the house. I heard everything. 3 days later, Marcus showed up at my hotel again. This time, security let him come up, because I'd requested it. He knocked on my door at exactly 8 p.m. When I opened it, he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His designer clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt. Emma, we need to fix this. The house. We got a foreclosure notice today. I stepped aside and let him in. On the desk, I'd laid out every document Becca and I had prepared. Bank statements, the property deed research, printed emails, and my phone with the recording queued up. Sit down, Marcus. He saw the papers and his face went white. Emma, whatever you think you know. I know you've been planning to steal from me for 2 years. I pressed play on the recording. His own voice filled the room. She's not on any of the deeds, genius. Dad made sure of that years ago. Emma thinks she's building equity, but legally? She owns nothing. Marcus's hands started shaking. That's not. You're taking it out of context. I fast-forwarded to Jennifer's voice, playing the helpless elderly couple while their spinster daughter funds their retirement. It's almost artistic. Context, Marcus? I asked quietly. What context makes that acceptable? He stood up, pacing to the window. Look, we were just talking, blowing off steam. You know how Jennifer gets when she's had wine. And this? I played the part about Mom's fake cancer scare. Marcus stopped pacing. His reflection in the window looked haunted. That's not. Mom really was scared. The tests were covered by insurance. Fully covered. But you let me pay $23,000 for treatments she never needed while you laughed about my stupidity. I walked to the desk and picked up a legal document. This is a forensic accounting report. 8 years, Marcus. $247,000 in total transfers. For a house I'm not legally entitled to, supporting parents who've been planning to throw me away like garbage. We're family, he said desperately. Families help each other. Help? I laughed, and the sound was cold even to my own ears. Is that what you call it when you track my spending to see when I'll run out of money? When you call me your personal ATM? Marcus turned from the window, his face red with anger now instead of shame. You chose this, Emma. Nobody forced you to play house with Mom and Dad. You could have had your own life. You're right, I said calmly. I did choose this, and now I'm choosing something else. I handed him another document. Cease and desist order. You, Jennifer, Mom, and Dad are legally forbidden from contacting me for any reason. Violation results in harassment charges. His hands shook as he read it. Emma, you can't be serious. Mom and Dad, they'll lose everything. Like I was going to lose everything in 6 months when you executed your plan? That was never. We wouldn't have, actually. Kicked me out with no savings, no business, and no home? I finished. According to this recording, that was exactly the plan. Marcus sank into the chair, his head in his hands. The house goes to auction next week. They'll have nothing. They'll have each other, and they'll have the valuable lesson that actions have consequences. I walked to the door and opened it. You know what the funny thing is, Marcus? I actually would have helped them downsize gracefully, would have made sure they were comfortable, even found them a nice place in one of those senior communities Mom always talked about. All they had to do was treat me like family instead of like a resource to be mined. He stood up slowly, clutching the legal papers. At the door, he turned back one last time. They really do love you, Emma, in their own way. I met his eyes steadily. For 42 years, I believed you. I believed that love meant sacrifice without recognition, giving without receiving, carrying everyone else's weight while being told I was the burden. I paused, letting the words sink in. But I know the difference now between real love and performance. Real love doesn't plan your disposal. Real love doesn't fake cancer to steal your money. Real love doesn't call you their biggest mistake. Marcus walked out without another word. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, the neighbor. Moving trucks at your parents' house. Heard they're renting that little place behind the Walmart. Such a shame. I closed the text and opened my laptop. Becca had sent me information about a small floral shop for sale in Portland, Oregon. A fresh start, 3,000 miles from the wreckage of my old life. For the first time in 8 years, I was building something just for me. And it felt like coming home. 6 months later, I was arranging white peonies in my new shop when Sarah texted me a photo from Brooklyn Heights. It was Marcus, pushing a shopping cart full of groceries across the Walmart parking lot. He wore a red vest with a name tag, his designer clothes replaced by the polyester uniform of a stock clerk. The same man who'd once bragged about his Tesla and his corner office was collecting carts in the rain. I stared at the photo for a long moment, then deleted it without replying. The letters had started arriving 3 weeks after the foreclosure. Mom's handwriting, shaky and desperate. Emma, darling, we made terrible mistakes. Your father cries every night. We're staying in a studio apartment now, and the neighbors, they all know what happened. Mrs. Henderson won't even wave anymore. Please, can we talk? We're your parents, we love you. Dad's letter came next. 2 pages of rambling apologies mixed with justifications. I never meant for Marcus to handle things that way. Your mother and I are old, Emma. We got confused, listened to the wrong advice. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive us? Family should stick together. Even Jennifer had written, her perfect penmanship revealing more desperation than remorse. Emma, I know we said awful things. Marcus has changed since losing his job. We're all struggling now. Maybe we could start over? I never understood how much you sacrificed. I kept the letters in a manila folder marked history, not to reread, but to remember how quickly love could be rewritten when the money stopped flowing. The most pathetic letter came from Marcus himself. I know I screwed up. Everything's falling apart. Dad's in the hospital again, stress-related, the doctors say. Mom's talking about taking a job at the senior center just to pay rent. I never thought it would go this far. Can't we fix this? You're the strongest person I know, you always were. Strongest person he knew. The same sister he'd called a burden, an ATM, a spinster who'd never figured out her own life. I burned that letter in the fireplace of my Portland cottage and never looked back. My new life bloomed like the flowers I arranged each morning. Petals and Peace sat on a quiet corner in the Alberta Arts District, surrounded by coffee shops and vintage bookstores. No family photos on my desk, no guilt-inducing phone calls interrupting my work. Just the satisfaction of creating something beautiful with my own hands, for customers who valued what I offered. The evening light filtered through my shop windows as I finished arranging the last bouquet of the day. Tomorrow was Valentine's Day, and I'd be busy from dawn to dusk creating symbols of love for couples who actually treasured each other. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Brooklyn. Emma, it's Mom. I got your number from your old job. Your father passed away yesterday. Heart attack. Funeral is Thursday. Please come. He loved you. We all love you. Please. I read it twice, waiting for the stab of grief, the guilt, the urge to rush back and play the dutiful daughter one last time. Instead, I felt empty. Not cold, just hollow where that family-shaped wound used to throb. I thought about Dad's last words to me, nodding when Mom called me a burden. I thought about 8 years of sacrifices he'd taken for granted, of medical bills he'd let me pay while sitting on insurance money, of his silence when they'd planned my disposal. I turned off my phone and walked home through the Portland rain. Love, I'd learned, wasn't about blood or history or shared DNA. Love was about seeing someone's worth and protecting it, not exploiting it. Love was about building someone up, not using them until they broke. In my living room, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the fireplace. On the mantel sat a single photo. Me at the grand opening of Petals and Peace, surrounded by new friends who knew nothing about my past, except that I made beautiful arrangements and asked thoughtful questions about their lives. Real family, I discovered, was something you chose, and chose you back. The rain patted gently against my windows, washing the world clean for tomorrow. Somewhere in Brooklyn, my mother was probably planning a funeral, wondering why her daughter wouldn't come home to mourn a man who'd helped plan her destruction. But I was home. Finally, truly home. And for the first time in 42 years, nobody could take that away from me. The truth isn't always kind, but it's always liberating. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is knowing when to stop giving it to people who never deserved it in the first place. 2 years have passed since that dinner table betrayal changed everything. I'm writing this from my sun-drenched kitchen in Portland, watching morning light filter through the windows of the home I bought with money I earned and kept for myself. The cottage is modest, 2 bedrooms, a small garden where I grow my own peonies, but every square inch belongs to me. No shared mortgages, no family names on the deed, no one who can decide I'm taking up too much space. Petals and peace has become more than I ever dreamed. Yesterday, a young bride chose my wildflower arrangement over the fancy downtown shops because, she said, "Your flowers look like they're telling a love story." She was right. They were telling the story of what happens when you finally love yourself enough to stop accepting less than you deserve. I keep no photos of my old family. Not because I'm bitter, but because I've learned the difference between preserving memories and preserving wounds. Some chapters close not with reconciliation, but with the wisdom to know when the story is over. Sarah still sends me updates from Brooklyn Heights, though I've asked her to stop. Marcus works 2 jobs now, the Walmart position and weekend maintenance at an office building. Mom lives in subsidized senior housing. Her garden club days a distant memory. The house I'd helped them keep for 8 years sold at auction for $1.1 million. They saw none of that money. It all went to the bank to cover the mortgage I'd been paying. I don't celebrate their struggles, but I don't mourn them either. They made choices. Consequences followed. That's not cruelty. That's truth. Last week, a woman about my age came into the shop, tears streaming down her face. Her daughter had just demanded she choose between her husband and supporting her daughter's gambling addiction. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "She's my child." I handed her tissues and spoke words I wish someone had said to me 8 years ago. Being someone's child doesn't give them the right to destroy your life. Love without respect isn't love, it's exploitation. She bought a single white rose. "For new beginnings," she said. That night, I realized why I survived when so many others in my situation don't. I stopped believing that family was about blood and started understanding it was about choice. Real family builds you up, celebrates your success, protects your peace. Real family doesn't track your bank account to see when you'll run dry. The greatest lesson I learned wasn't about revenge, it was about value. For 42 years, I gave everything to people who saw me as a resource, not a person. The moment I started treating myself with the respect they never showed me, everything changed. Tonight, I'll water my garden and plan tomorrow's arrangements. Simple pleasures that cost nothing and belong entirely to me. No one can take them away because no one gave them to me. I sleep peacefully now, without the weight of ungrateful hearts pressing down on my chest. Without wondering if this month's transfer will finally earn me the love I'd been chasing my whole life. The truth is both simpler and more painful than I once believed. Some people will take everything you give and still ask for more. Not because they love you, but because they've learned you'll say yes. The other truth is more beautiful. When you finally say no, you discover who you really are underneath all that giving. You discover you're enough. You always were. Family isn't about sharing blood. It's about sharing respect, gratitude, and genuine care. Without those, you're not family. You're just people who happen to know each other's phone numbers. I believed in unconditional love for 42 years. Now I believe in conditional respect. And that has made all the difference. Some bridges burn to light the way forward. Sometimes the greatest act of love is finally loving yourself enough to walk away.